Well, Kate and Jerry are very pleased and relieved that the judge has done absolutely the right thing in their view by agreeing to their demand for the injunction to stay in place against Mr. Amaral's so-called work. It was causing serious, ongoing disruption and damage to the search for their daughter because people, if they believed what he'd written, would think that she was dead and wouldn't even bother to look for her or pursue any information if they came across it. That is absolutely wrong. There is no evidence at all to suggest that she's been harmed, let alone killed, and every reason for the search to continue. And that's what Kate and Jerry now want, the focus to come back onto the search for their daughter.
I mean, don't the public have the right to make their own mind up on that? If what he says about them is completely untrue, and that's obviously provable, shouldn't he be allowed to say it and the public make up their own mind?
But under the laws of defamation, as a journalist, you will well know that if you allege somebody is in effect responsible for the death of their child and in effect has covered it up, that is prima facie defamatory of your good name. And therefore, they not only had to take action on that basis, but more importantly than their own reputation or the damage that was doing to their wider family, they felt it was important to stop people believing this because it would mean that the search for Madeleine was hindered. So this was a clear-cut case of defamation, regardless of the rights and wrongs. Yes, you have the freedom of speech to say what you want within the rule of law.
Obviously, this isn't the end, unfortunately, for Kate and Jerry McCann on this issue. Former detective in question, says he's going to take this to the European Court of Human Rights.
That absolutely is his right, and he's perfectly entitled to do that. And if that legal process starts in due course, well, then that will be dealt with at that time. But for now, Kate and Jerry feel that the strength of their case is strong. They felt that this was an absolute injustice being committed against them and indirectly against Madeleine herself. And as a result, they are very pleased and, as I say, relieved that the judge has agreed with them and has made it clear that this injunction has to stay in place and that Mr. Amaral does not benefit from his this work.
I mean, turning to the search for Madeleine, I mean, with this, bearing this ruling in mind, does this make the search for Madeleine easier? Well,
hopefully it will do. Yes, hopefully people will see this and see that this particular attack on them has been ended. And as a result, they need to focus on the key message, if you like, that we want to get across today, and that is that the judge has effectively agreed that it should all be about Madeleine from now on. What came out during this case? Well, there were two broad areas. One, there is no evidence at all to suggest she's been harmed, and two, no police force anywhere is actively looking for her, shockingly, even when presented with new information and leads, as the Portuguese have been. Those were dismissed as not relevant to the investigation. Well, the private investigators would like to look at much of that information to establish if indeed there may be any relevance in there. The search for Madeleine will not stop. Kate and Jerry will not give up until they know what's happened to their daughter. And at the moment, it remains a complete mystery, and they are conducting as best an investigation as they can on their own limited resources at present. It's incumbent upon both the British and Portuguese police now to mount as effective and credible an investigation as they can, and if that involves some sort of independent review of the existing evidence and potential leads, then so be it. But the search for Madeleine needs to be the focus from now on, not noises off stage from the likes of Mr. Amaral.
I mean, it's been a long time now since Madeleine disappeared. Kate and Jerry
it's been nearly 3 years.
Still feel hopeful that she can be found?
Kate and Jerry have always drawn strength from the fact that there is no evidence to suggest she's been harmed in any way whatsoever. Yes, of course, nearly 3 years on, it's appalling that they're still having to hope. They would have wanted her home the very first day. But in the absence of that evidence to tell us, any of us, what has happened to her, they will continue to believe as best they can that there is hope. And every time they, even if they begin to doubt that, every time something like J.C. Lee Dugard happens in California, in America, where someone is discovered, in her case, 18 years after she went missing and was long presumed dead. It can happen. It's rare. Kate and Jerry will keep going on that basis.
I mean, with rulings like today, do you think Kate and Jerry are swaying public opinion in their favour?
Well, that's a matter for the public, isn't it, really? I mean, Kate and Jerry will keep going. They didn't start this legal action. They don't want to appear to be litigious for the sake of it. They're not. They didn't write this book. They didn't write this DVD. Mr. Amaral did. And what he said in it was fundamentally wrong and damaging to the search, and that's why they took the action. Yes, they hope that people, fair-minded people, will see this and see the agony that's been heaped upon their shoulders on top of the loss of Madeleine, and will hopefully be with them in the search for Madeleine from now on.
I mean, we've learned that Robert Morat has a legal complaint against one of the friends of Kate and Jerry over things she said about his alleged involvement in Madeleine's disappearance. Presumably, if he gets a similar sort of ruling that Kate and Jerry got today, they'd support it.
I'm not going to comment in any detail on what Mr. Murat or his legal representatives are doing. Suffice to say that Jane Tanner never directly named Mr. Murat as the man that she saw. And you can go back to the Portuguese police files that were released in 2008 to see that for yourself. She never actually named Mr. Murat as the prime suspect.
Okay. I mean, last question. I think a lot of people would say that quite a lot of money has been made from Madeleine's disappearance from various court cases. How much has been made, and is this being used in legal proceedings like the one we've seen in Portugal?
The fund is there to assist Kate and Jerry in whatever way necessary. There are a number of other backers as well outside the fund who also assist at times. The bulk, in fact, all of the public money that came in the early stages was all spent entirely properly on the search for Madeleine, on the investigative costs and everything else around that. Most of the monies that are still in the fund now are actually there from either the settlements against the Express Group newspapers and other media outlets that have also defamed them. And so that is money that was, if you like, brought in through court action, not the public. And on top of that, the most recent monies that have come in have been through supporters kindly donating at a fundraising event. And again, they would be more than happy as supporters to see the money spent in any way that assists Kate and Jerry and the wider family and their investigators in the search for Madeleine.
I mean, last question, in fact. Obviously, the ruling today upheld a temporary injunction on it's been written and DVD as well. What steps or how far away are the McCanns from getting a permanent injunction?
That's a matter for the lawyers in Portugal. They'll assess the verdict. They'll be examining it in detail, see exactly what the judge has said today, and they no doubt will move towards that goal at some stage in the future. I don't know the exact timetable, but clearly there's not much point in going for a temporary injunction if it doesn't become permanent, and that will happen. But I'm quite sure that any appeal by Mr. Amaral's side will possibly delay that, but that, as I say, is purely a matter for the lawyers to decide in due course.